All right, I want to talk about a few things that have come to my mind lately. And there's two things that I want to talk about. One is liberty, because not the insurance company, which is the first thing that comes up on Google, but the concept of the word and the idea of liberty. And the other one I wanted to talk about is DEI. I'll see if I get time for it, how it relates. Well, the concept of liberty is something that is written about in the Constitution, in the preamble of the Constitution. We ensure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. And then it's also written about in the Declaration of Independence. And I think maybe people have sort of jumbled up the meaning a little bit in the modern age, somewhat, depending upon their political beliefs and so forth. But I looked it up in the dictionary. The first definition is the quality or state of being free. That was the first definition. The second definition was the power to do as one pleases. And the third one was freedom from physical restraint. So those are kind of the ideas of liberty. And the number two one is the one that seems to be, my favorite definition: the power to do as one pleases. And of course, what was it? Locke and so forth wrote about the liberty, and some other people right around that time, which was right around 1776. They wrote about liberty, the idea that you can you have the liberty to swing your arms around as long as you're not hitting somebody, which is then restraining their liberty. But here's the problem I'm having with today's ideas: is that certain individuals in the political realm in the United States, where I'm at, seem to think that liberty only applies to businesses. Businesses, the idea that, and this is, how capitalism would work, I suppose, but you have the right to own your own property and do whatever you want with your own property. And if it reaps you some profits, then that's fine. You get to keep what you reap from your own property and your own efforts. But they seem to think that this liberty only applies to businesses. There's also liberty that applies to people, and I'm having a little bit of problem, with this concept with certain people, because, some people. Well. The reason that they made a big deal about liberty at that time was because they had just gone through some repressive situations in the world, Europe, where they had 100. And, well, then they moved over to the United States and set up their own colonies over there. Of course, they took away the liberty of the Indians, but they decided that we don't need to tell each other what they have to believe. What we with this new concept of liberty that we have is that if you believe what you believe, that's fine, and if I believe what I believe, that's fine too. We should allow each other to believe whatever we want. And of course, that evolved into what we have today, which is the businesses get to do whatever they want, and tough luck if you don't like it. There's, as I said, there is a idea that you can swing your arms around until you hit somebody else, though. So if you're a business owner and you want to dump toxic chemicals into the back of your factory, you own the land, really you're damaging the people downstream. So you're actually swinging your arms to hit people. But here's another thing that a lot of people in today's day and age, I mean, they're out talking about making the United States into a white Christian nation. Now, that's irritating, okay? For me, that's very irritating. The the idea that you have to teach the Bible in school, put the Ten Commandments on the wall. Don't you understand that this is also the same thing? You could swing your arms around until you hit somebody else. There's people who are not Christians that live in your neighborhood, and they send their kids to that same school, and they might be Muslims, they might be Hindus, you see, and you're forcing your beliefs down their throat. That is not liberty. Now, there's the other concept that seems to be a big problem with people nowadays, is that the sexual things. You know, if they don't want people to be able to identify as what they call non-binary, you know, you're either a man or you're a woman. You can't be like call yourself a transsexual or anything like that. Well, who says? Who says that? You know, if when I personally consider myself, and I know that I am a heterosexual male, but nobody taught me to be a heterosexual male. It was just the way that I am, the way that I feel, you know, and the way that I choose. And but somebody else is not the same as you are. Somebody else may be someone who is not heterosexual. They may be a homosexual. They're attracted to their own gender, you know. So people in today's day and age get all upset about that and get mad and say you're not allowed to do that. You know, they have moved into a more liberty-oriented society lately, but nowadays they're going back again. They say, well, we don't want any homosexuals. We're going to put homosexuals in jail. We're going to forbid them. We're going to retrain them. Well, who says the number two definition is the power to do as one pleases. And if there's two consenting adults and they want to do whatever they want, tough luck for you. You know, if they live down the street and they're homosexuals, what's that have to do with you? Mind your own damn business, you know? That's not liberty. You're talking about oppression in that situation. That's evil oppression. I don't care what you say. You say, oh, well, you know, it says in the Bible. Well, that's your Bible, too, you know. Maybe I don't read the Bible. Maybe I don't agree with the Bible. You know, everything's got to be your way or the highway. You know, other people don't get to say what they want and do what they want because you're more special than them. So this is where I'm going into the DEI thing. Because there's been a movement now in the right wing, certain elected officials, you know, stupid Republicans, who want to get rid of what they call DEI in all government functions, in all school functions and so forth. What does DEI stand for? It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I believe that those are things that are good, that we should allow for diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's called liberty. That's allowing people to live their lives as they choose. You know, I bring this up also when I hear people talking about DEI and they talk about critical race theory and all this stuff. You know, what I'm hearing is I'm a racist when people start objecting to this stuff. What I'm hearing is, yeah, I don't like black people, you know. That's what I'm hearing, you know. I don't like Hispanics. I don't like Arabs. I only like white people. That's what I'm hearing when I hear people objecting to DEI. It's the same thing Adolf Hitler believed in. You know, it is. It's absolutely what Adolf Hitler believed in. You know, that I see people that are pro-Israel and pro-Jewish, they say, and they're kind of against DEI at the same time. Because in the current American configuration, the Jewish people aren't considered as a separate that race. You know, there would be able to get into schools and get jobs in the government and everything else, regardless of whether they're Jewish or not, because we fought that war. But what about the other people, the black people and the females that want to get jobs they want to be taken on an equal basis, equity, What about those people? They may not, Adolf Hitler didn't discount those people because they weren't even considered at that time. But today's Jews, like they were in Germany, are the blacks and the women and so forth, and the Hispanics and people that don't agree with you religiously. Those are the people that are being discriminated against now. So when you're just being a Nazi, if you're against DEI, that's just the new Nazi movement. You can call it something else. You call it fascism, or you can call it MAGA, but it's not something that defends liberty. Liberty means that, you can do what you want, and I can do what I want, and they can do what they want, as long as they're not infringing upon somebody else's rights and liberties. How hard is that for people to understand? It seems like it's very hard for people to understand, and I just don't get it.